Now that we have seen what a CFD mesh is and how it looks like, we will see different types of meshes. Based on the CAD geometry which is used to create mesh, there are two types of meshes. First is surface mesh and other is volume mesh. The imported CAD geometry surfaces will also have triangulation or tessellations which are used for surface mesh. Hence, it is also referred to as surface mesh in star CCM+. As shown here, the first image is of surface mesh. If we look into interior volume as shown in the second image, we see the volume mesh. Volume mesh is 3D and surface mesh is 2D in nature. What is a mesher? A mesher is a model or algorithm which creates some type of mesh either automatically or semi-automatically. Star CCM Plus has many meshes. We will list different type of meshes here and later on we will see the important ones in detail. We will also learn how to use them. First is the surface wrapper. What does it do? This wraps the initial surface to provide a closed and manifold surface mesh from complex geometry. Then we have the surface remesher. This remeshes the initial surface to provide a quality discretized mesh that is suitable for CFD. These are the surface meshes. Let us see volume meshes now. First is the trimmed mesher. It generates a volume mesh by cutting a hexahedral template mesh with the geometry surface. Then we have the polyhedral mesher. This generates a volume mesh that is composed of polyhedral shaped cells. We also have the tetrahedral mesher, which generates a volume mesh that is composed of tetrahedral shaped cells. After this, we will see the prism layer mesher. This mesher adds prismatic cell layers next to wall boundaries. The mesher projects the core mesh back to the wall boundaries to create prismatic cells. There is also the advancing layer mesher. It creates a volume mesh composed of prismatic cell layers next to wall boundaries and a polyhedral mesh elsewhere. The mesher creates a surface mesh on the wall and projects it to create the prismatic cell layers. There is the extruder mesher. This generates an extruded mesh region from a boundary that one of the core volume meshers has meshed. Then there is the thin mesher. This generates a prismatic layered volume mesh for thin geometries. There is the generalized cylinder mesher. This generates a volume mesh appropriate for elongated cylindrical regions. There is the shelling mesher. This generates a shell mesh region from a boundary that one of the core volume meshers has meshed. This mesh model is specifically for modeling casting methods. These meshes which we discussed till now are unstructured meshes. What if we need to generate structured mesh? For that we have directed meshing. This generates a mesh by creating a two-dimensional patch mesh on a surface and sweeping it through the volume along a specified guide surface. Let us now learn these different meshes in detail. When we generate mesh in star CCM+, we have to follow some meshing strategies. These strategies depend upon the geometry and mesh type we want. If we are generating unstructured mesh, we have two strategies: the part-based meshing and the region-based meshing. In part-based meshing, the mesher detaches the meshing from the physics and provides a flexible and repeatable meshing pipeline. In region-based meshing, the mesher will mesh the surface and volume at the region level. If we want to generate structured mesh, then we have to use the directed meshing strategy. Directed meshing generates high-quality structured meshes on CAD geometry. It operates by sweeping a surface mesh from the surface of CAD geometry through its volume.